So now we've done our image alignments, and we can pick our grid squares that we actually want to collect data on. So we want to reload our atlas. We can do this job from here, but just visually I think it's helpful to have it loaded into our main screen. And we have all of these different grid squares to pick from. This was a 3x3 atlas. Sometimes you'll have more if you collect 5x5 or 6x6. But just looking at this atlas, one thing you'll notice is we have thick ice here, and then we have very open grid squares here. And almost always these types of grid squares will have empty holes or ice that's too thin, whereas these types of grid squares, the smaller ones, will have ice that's too thick. So you kind of want to hit the Goldilocks zone when you're picking these, and pick something more along the lines of these grid squares where my mouse is, that have rounded edges and are kind of medium sized. That's not always the case. Sometimes it's best to collect on these very small holes if you have unique ice, and sometimes it's and this is really great if it's the case. You can collect on these really large grid squares that give you a lot of information. So you need to identify the grid squares that you want to collect on, and we want to say add points. And we want to pick out the grid squares that we're interested in collecting on. We want to pick the very center of those. Here, 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 here. And one of the things you want to do is pick them kind of sequentially in order, and that will be important later on when Serialium is finding the eccentric height of each grid square individually. One of the things that I've noticed is if you travel from one grid square all the way across to the other, the difference in eccentric height between this grid square and this grid square can be very different, and it can cause errors in Serialium. Whereas if you go gradually from one grid square to the next, you don't run into that problem quite as easily. It's not to say that it can't happen, but it's not as easy. And we're just setting up an overnight data collection. So I'm going to just go with, I believe that's 6, 9, I think 10 squares should be enough. And I like to pick one extra actually, just to be safe, just in case. So we'll go with, I don't know, this one. That's a little bit of a jump, but it should be okay. Stop adding. And now we want to go to our very first grid square, which was number 5, if you remember. Oh no, it's number 3, sorry. And we want to say acquire, new file at item. And this is really important. You want to tell Serialium you want to collect a montaged image. Okay. And for this image, we want to collect a 1x1 montage, which is just a regular image, but it's important for some reason that it be montaged. And we want to save this as square underscore 01. We'll save that. And then we're just going to go down the line and say acquire new file at item for every single grid square. So acquire new file at item, acquire new file at item. And you'll see in the naming later on that Serialium will automatically give names to all of the succeeding grid squares. So 3 is going to be square 01, 4 will be square 02, and so on. Okay. And you can actually just use your keyboard to move I skipped one. And we'll do that for all positions. And now we're ready to collect our images. So we've told the navigator which points we want to acquire. And we've told the navigator how, and given it file names. So we want to come to navigator, acquire at items, and we want to find the rough and fine eccentricity of each grid square, and we want to acquire a map image or montage. And because we're planning on being here, attending to the microscope when we're done, we want to leave the column valves open when we're done, and we want to press go. And you'll always get this prompt, just say go on. And what it will do is move to position 3 and start tilting the stage, and you'll see it say finding rough eccentricity and refining eccentricity before taking an image. And this part takes about 30 minutes, so it's a good time to take a little break, maybe take a nap. And it's good to verify that one of your squares has been collected before you leave. Okay, now it's finally taking an image, and we should get back an image of a full grid square. And there we go. So we'll stop there, and when we get back, we will set up a image shift template and a buffer P